Hello, and welcome to Access Spotlight, the PATV series that features accomplishments by our village residents. I'm Shirley Ann Bruno, and my guest today is Pauli Libsohn. Pauli lives in the village of North Hills, and she has collected and published a wonderful book of poetry written by her mother, Mitzi. Hello, Pauli.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Pauli, the title of this book is called Immortal Kisses, Confessions of a Poet.
Correct.
You created the title.
Well, my mother and I had been working on this manuscript because she had the hopes of having this book published. And she chose Confessions of a Poet, and then I chose Immortal Kisses because I felt that Immortal Kisses was really the story of her love affair with my father. And I felt that it was all-encompassing. And I felt that love, really, it told the story of nature and love and personal relationships.
Well, describe their relationship.
Their relationship was very unusual. They met at the beach in Far Rockaway when my father was 17 and a lifeguard, and my mother was 12 and she was the young girl on the beach. And what happened was, in order to get my father's attention, she would bring books to the beach and get him involved in reading these books. And then over the winter, she would get him a whole bunch of books, and she would send him home to the Bronx, and she would go back to Forest Hills, and they would write letters to one another about these books that my mother gave him for the winter. And that's how their relationship started. And then through that, they fell deeply in love. And my father developed a wonderful love of literature through my mother. And that's really how it started. So in commemoration of the beginning of their love affair, she wrote this poem, Immortal Kisses. So I thought it would be perfect for the title of the book.
And the artwork on the title?
The artwork I chose.
Yeah.
They went on a honeymoon to Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. And they never stopped talking about that honeymoon. And I felt that I wanted something to commemorate that, and also that represented romance, mystery, and poetry. And so I went on the internet, and
there it is.
And there it was, and I found it.
Wonderful.
So,
you know, reading the poems, they are really beautiful, beautiful, each
thank
one.
you.
And it means there's a universality with the poetry, and yet I know it came from very specific things within your mom as the poet.
And you can feel the emotion. I mean, and each time you read a poem, you get more out of it.
Absolutely.
It's different each time. But the feeling behind it is incredible. They're easy to read, they flow, and they give you a sense of escape into romance and nature.
Definitely.
Yes.
Would you read Immortal Kisses
Yes,
for
I
us?
will. Yes. Ghosts imprisoned by yesterday, stand guard and laugh when I grow dizzy with the taste of kisses remembered. Kisses frozen in my throat. Kisses you gave me when we danced on the beach. Immortal kisses. And that was the beginning of their relationship, and she never forgot it. And they were inseparable throughout their lifetime. It was an incredible relationship. And most of these poems in here are about their relationship, and the nature poems are disguised.
Interesting.
About their love.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
You have this wonderful family, your parents, so loving.
Yes.
And so giving.
Yes.
But where did you grow up?
I grew up in Great Neck. I lived on Burberry Lane, and I went to E.M. Baker School. Okay. And then from there we moved to the village of Kensington. And then I went to Great Neck South Junior and Senior High. And then from there, I went to C.W. Post College. And at C.W. Post College, I had an assignment from my English professor to write a poem, and I was very nervous about it. So I came home and I said to my mother, I said, if I write this poem, I said, can you listen to it and tell me if it's okay to bring to class? And so she said yes, so I wrote this poem, and I titled it Imitation of a Poem, because I had no idea what I was doing.
Okay. All right.
So anyway, so I read it to her, and she said it was terrific.
Okay.
She said, go to class, she said, and feel confident. So I did, and the teacher liked it.
Good.
In the meantime, I came home, and that night, she said to me, you know, I got the idea to write a poem from your assignment. And I said, you did? And she said, yes. And she said, listen to this. And that was the very first poem that she ever wrote, because of the fact that I had this assignment. And
how old was she?
Let's see, she was born in 1922, so the assignment was 1971. Amazing. So she was, what, about 40 or 50 years old then.
Okay. And that's the first time she decided to write poetry.
Correct. She never wrote a poem before that. And then after that, it just flowed. It was the most amazing thing. She never stopped writing. And she would bring her pad and pen with her wherever she went. Even in the car, she would bring it. And she would stop by the side of the road, and she would write. And then I would come home, and she would say to me, listen to this, listen to what I wrote. And she and I would sit at the kitchen table, and I would give her my comments, and we would write it up together, and I would type it. And that's how it began.
What a great
all
bonding.
through these years. Oh, we were so close.
What a great bonding.
Yes, and we had that. And my father was always in the background laughing. He'd say, ha, 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 you know, he couldn't imagine. But he loved it.
Did you include her first poem in
yes,
that collection?
Yes, I did. Yes. Let me read that to you.
Oh, please.
And she wrote this, and she never made a correction from it. I mean, it just went. The title is Duet. The young tree moves in agitation to arrange her hair made perverse by gnarled nests. Long fingers lift lovingly to unlace knots in strands whose color was borrowed from your eyes. The young tree moves in exultation and combs her hair twisted by cantankerous birds. Amorous arms rise commandingly to restore calm to the last movement of our duet.
Oh, lovely. Her first poem?
Her first poem.
Amazing.
And there was never a correction, and that was it.
So the subjects that she liked to write about, love.
Love and nature. She loved birds. She thought birds were just so beautiful, and she used to marvel at them. And she even made a little friend with one of the birds in our backyard. And she named that bird Wendy, and it was a little wren. And it was amazing. It would follow her around. It knew her.
Oh, my.
And we had several bird baths in our backyard with several gardens. And she would be out there all the time with the bird baths and the gardens and the flowers. And she loved the flowers. She would look at a flower and she would say to me, look at this petal. She said to me, can you imagine that someone made this petal, that created this petal? She would go on and on about the flowers and the colors and the leaves, and she would look at the trees, and she couldn't get over how the branches were actually flowing. She couldn't get over how all this was created.
Looked at the world as an artist.
Yes, she did.
And her artistry came out in poems.
Yes.
Did she ever paint?
No.
No.
But you know, when people met her, they would say to her, are you an artist? Are you a dancer? They could not get over her. She was so different.
In what way was she different?
She was very striking. She had a sense of fashion. She had a sense of artistic creation. She just loved putting things together. She never stopped. And all I can say is she was artistic, and she was very deep. She was always reading. And she and my father always were together. They never really cultivated friendships outside their marriage because they always wanted to be with one another. It was the most amazing thing. Yeah. All the way up until the end of their marriage, it was just like that. They wanted no one else but themselves.
Now, your father passed away before your mom.
Yes, in 2004.
And how did that affect her writing?
After he passed, she wrote deeper writings about him. She was terribly affected by this, and her writing did change. You could see the examples of it in the book. She was, as I say, she was never the same after he passed away. And
Sure.
I just feel that that's why so quickly after he passed, she passed, because she could not live without him.
Yeah, that
Right.
happens to many,
Right.
many couples. So, was she always interested in getting this poetry published?
No, I gave her the idea.
Good.
I said to her, I said, this poetry is so gorgeous. What happened also was I bought a volume of Robert Frost's poetry, and I was reading it. And I said to myself, my mother's poetry is just like Robert Frost's, or even better.
Okay.
So I barged into her room, and I made this big announcement, and both she and my father thought I didn't know what I was talking about. And I got the poetry out, and I said, look, I said, it's gorgeous poetry. I said, no one writes poetry like this. It's beautiful, romantic poetry that everyone can understand and flows, and the emotion is so deep. I mean, it just comes from her soul. You can feel it. And I said, we have to publish this. So then she and I were on a mission, and it never stopped. And then she passed away. And then I put everything aside, and I waited for about 3 years. And then for 4 years, I worked on this book, and I got it together, and then I published it. But most publishing houses, they did not want this because they're afraid of poetry.
Oh, okay.
When people hear poetry, they think of something, oh my God, they can't possibly understand it, or they think it's existential. But it's
Right.
not. There are all kinds of poetry, and
Sure.
all sides and all facets. And her poetry is, as I say, it's just gorgeous.
No, I agree with you with that, but I also found that reading her poetry, it resonated with me. I could connect
Yes.
with it. I could relate to it.
Yes.
And I didn't know her, but her themes, even though they are specific for her,
Yes.
there's a universality in it.
Yes, there is.
That I really, and they're visual. They're
Yes.
so visual.
Yes.
And that is really enjoyable,
Yes.
you know. So I'm glad you were successful.
Yes,
At
I'm
publishing.
very excited, yes. And there was just this one publisher who would accept it. Nobody else would. It was the most amazing thing because, again, she was an unknown, and they did not want to take the chance.
Right.
But then when this particular publisher, Page Publishing, saw this, they said, this is gorgeous, and we will publish it.
Oh.
And there is something to this.
How did that make you feel?
I was ecstatic because it had to go before their literary board
Sure.
to be accepted, and I was just thrilled.
All right, so the book is published, and
Yes.
then there's a article in Newsday and
Yes.
the local papers,
Yes.
and a whole
It was a rush.
understanding. A rush, yes.
Yes.
So how did you feel reading that?
I was ecstatic because going from a complete unknown, especially in poetry, my mother was an unknown, for everyone to give me the recognition, I couldn't get over it. But everyone that I spoke to, they could not get over this book. They couldn't get over the cover. They couldn't get over the poetry, and they felt that the cover of the book actually pulled people in because you wanted to know what was at the end of the dock. And it was hypnotic.
Yes.
Yes.
You're a good agent.
Oh, thank you. I'm very passionate about this because my mother was very passionate, and I wanted this for my mother. She deserved this. She worked very hard on it for 35 years. And I just wanted her to have the recognition because she was so different and she was so special, really.
So by publishing these poems, you've
Yes.
shared your mother
Yes.
with us.
Yes, yes.
Now, if people want to find this book, how can they get the book?
They can get the book from AmazonBooks.com.
Perfect.
Or BarnesandNobles.com. You can also go into Barnes and Nobles and order it through them. It's not in the bookstore because, again, they were a little hesitant because it's poetry, but you can get it. If you go in, you can get it from them.
So now, could you read another poem?
Yes. Okay.
I think the audience should really hear some of them. They really are just amazing.
They are gorgeous. Let's see.
Is a favorite of yours?
I'm going to read Where Have the Wild Geese Gone?
Good.
Where have the wild geese gone whose cries broke the silence and filled the stillness of the night when once you held me in your arms and we listened? Where is the moon that floated through window panes, crossed and recrossed thresholds, and gave new meaning to the mysterious night as you lay beside me? And oh, my love, where is the unforgiving wind that whistled and sang through eaves, blowing away with its songs and settling its chill on the passion that lay in your last kiss? Now that is gorgeous.
Yes.
And I always felt that the reason why she wrote this was in remembrance of her honeymoon.
Oh, okay.
In New Hampshire, because they stayed in a cabin and they were all birds, and my mother would tell me about the ducks and the geese, and I just felt that this was in memory of that.
It's lovely. So you, on a personal side, you know the genesis for these poems.
Yes.
But you don't need that. Each one speaks to you.
That's right. And they're universal. They're really universal. Everybody can get something of themselves and see something of themselves in these poems.
Now, how many poems did she write?
Well, there are about 200 poems in this book. And I thought at the end of this book that was it.
Right.
But then I started to go through some more of her papers. And I found an entire box that I had never gone through.
Oh, my.
And then I started going through it, and I thought they were just notes or whatever. But I found another 100 poems. And I am now working on another book. And I hope to send it to the publisher around January or February of next year and get that out also.
Now, are they different?
They are a little different.
Is it from a different time?
Yes, after my father passed away.
Oh.
So, but they have the same feeling.
Sure.
But they're different. They're still gorgeous. It's gorgeous poetry. You would still know that they are her poems. And
so it's her unique style.
Yes.
But a different focus.
Correct.
A different point in her life.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. So you don't write poetry?
No. That was the one poem I ever wrote for that class, and I never wrote another poem. I have edited her poems, and that's
a hard job.
Yeah, it's very hard, because a lot of them weren't finished. So I had to, there were about 20 or 30 poems that I actually had to finish in the way in which I thought that she would finish them.
Very difficult.
It was terribly hard. But
you did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do you have a title for this next book?
Yes. I am titling it Songs of You, a Postscript.
Oh, I love that.
It's gorgeous, yes.
Oh, that is so nice.
Thank you.
Now, for you, what do you enjoy doing? If you have no time, though, working on all these poems.
Well, I enjoy gardening. I'm always out in my garden, and where I live, people will tell you, I have one of the most beautiful gardens. And
so your mother's love of nature lives on in you.
Yes, I got that from her. It started where we used to live, and it continued to here. And I designed all my gardens where I am now.
Do you have something special in the garden for your mom?
Yes. I bought a beautiful statue, and it reminds me of a dancer, a very fluid dancer, and my mother always looked like that, so I put it in the garden and in her honor. And I call it the dancer. Whether or not that's the name, I don't know, but I called it the dancer.
Now, your mother was, where was she raised? In Forest Hills? But
in Forest Hills, yes.
And her family?
Well,
what was important to her and her family?
That's a tough question, because my mother's family, they were very poor. And it was the time of the immigrants back in the 1920s. And her parents worked very hard. And they really didn't have time to spend with their children. So they were left to themselves.
Right.
And she had two other sisters, and they were really like ragamuffins, and they would play in the street and whatever. And they had a dry goods store, and consisting of one room, the store and the back. And she, her two sisters, and her parents lived in that one room. And her parents gave her a job every day to go out and beg for food.
What a difficult childhood.
And she begged on the street with her sisters for potatoes and cabbages. And that is why, to this day, she was never able to eat a potato or a cabbage. However, she would go to the beach each summer. My grandmother had sisters and brothers, and they had bungalows on the beach in Far Rockaway. So they would ship these children to the beach each summer.
With Grandma?
Yes.
Didn't she write a poem about her grandmother?
Yes, she did, and it's called The Grandmother.
Oh, let's hear that.
And she is the one, really, who she attributes everything to in her life.
Oh, how nice.
Yes. And I'll read that to you. Blossoms on the vine, cradle songs remembered, lullabies recalled, skin crinkled like crepe. She was the flame, the sentinel who guarded us, the cupbearer, the ancient monument, the flinty heart, the mitigative influence, the ethereal fluid flowing in from the stars. We were flowers clustering around her. She was the river that enfolded us, the steady ray of light that shone, the brilliance that flowed sweetly over us. Innocent as a meadow plant, her face appears in the morning star. Her nearness is a gift at daybreak that twines itself into just born leaves. Her nearness in space exists in the passage of time between two full moons. She is the perennial plant, flawless as a buttercup. Hers is the voice that floats out over rivers we never got to know. She is disguised in the hardwood of trees, sweet-smelling pine and birch, redolent of sage and smoke. She is the capstone on our hearts, and we, who are all alone, hunger for her love.
That is lovely.
Yeah, she never forgot her grandmother.
How wonderful.
Ever. Yes.
So now, Pauli,
Yes.
as you start to get busy with the second volume
Yes.
of poems, does she have anything that she's kind of left you to words that you were going to be followed by? I think you told me she had an epilogue she wrote.
Yes. I could not get over that I found this while going through all of the new poems that I found.
Right.
And she wrote, it stopped me, I had to catch myself. And she wrote this about herself, and she never showed this to me. And she titled it, The Achievement of Fame. And she wrote, how exhilarating. By trying the untried, I have discovered a path, a passageway into confidence and immortality. Poems interacting with the ingenuity of my ideas. Thus I have affirmed the possibility of triumph. Versed in language, I am reduced by what I have achieved to one word, magnifico. Someday I will be famous, not for singing in chorales, but for heightening anything that I touch, and you will have to push your way to get close to me.
And you are doing that for
I
her.
am doing that. And
That's
I couldn't get
wonderful.
over that I located this, and she never told me.
Well, you are a wonderful
Yes.
daughter,
Thank you.
a wonderful editor,
Thank you. Thank you.
and an author, basically, because
Yes.
you have put these poems together.
Yes.
And
yes.
I have enjoyed this time. I enjoy the book
thank you.
so much. I
Oh,
love
thank
poetry,
you.
and this is just...
Yes.
So keep going.
Thank you, I will. Thank you so much.
And thank you for coming on Access Spotlight.
Oh, you're
Will
welcome.
you come back again when
Yes, I will, with the second book.
The second book?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pauli, I want to thank you for coming here and sharing this wonderful book of poetry of your mom's.
Oh, thank you.
And come back again.
I will.
When the second volume is ready.
Yes, I will.
We're always happy to have our residents from the villages
so
here
much.
sharing their wonderful accomplishments.
Thank you.
Okay. And I want to thank our audience for tuning in. And remember to watch Public Access TV, Channel 20 on Cablevision and Channel 37 on Verizon Fios. And you can always check out our schedules at patv.org. Thank you.